Hello everyone, this is part 6 of What If Naruto Was Neglected and Was Trained by Shisui, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Naruto didn't know how he should be feeling as he walked to the left of Kurenai, with Narumi flanking her right. It had been just over a week now that the new team, dubbed Team Kurenai, left Konoha in Purisa of Yukagaku in hopes to solve the strange fortune mystery that had uncovered itself. They had just broken through from the Land of Fire's border and were making good time covering the rest of the distance to Yukagaku. Less than a day's trip and they would finally have made it to the outskirts of Yukagaku, having to cross the icy water on a boat before getting able to step foot onto the country itself. The country had been experiencing an overabundance of snowfall for about 2 years. Even during summer the snow continued to fall over the country, making trading especially hard for the neighboring villages and countries with treaties. Somehow though, by either miracle or luck, the country managed to prosper further with the excess amount of snow. More wildlife seems to roam the snow-covered land and plenty of different fish species have been discovered in their icy waters. There have even been rumors circulating that the Yukagaku was beginning to establish a shinobi system, but those were just rumors since most travelers and shinobi alike tend to stay away from the desolate country. Many finding it too cold to endure, especially during winter. During their trip, Naruto managed to get several training opportunities when it was his turn for guard duty. While he couldn't practice any of his blood or water ninjutsu, he had raised the weights that Shisui had on his body and made sure he practiced his taijutsu katas. He stationed several water clones around their campsite for some extra precaution as he lost himself into his training. The one particular jutsu he had wanted to master, or at least adequately learn to control, was the Shunshin jutsu. He had only ever performed the jutsu successfully in his battle with Sokka, but he was sure it was due to the Bijuus residing in him that helped him actually use the technique. Since he was never able to physically move that fast before, his early attempts usually left him with a mouth full of dirt and a sore back. But the more and more time he had for guard duty, the more proficient he was getting with the jutsu. While he was nowhere close to Shisui's level of mastery with the jutsu, he was proficient enough to move around at speeds most chunin who performed the jutsu couldn't do. And it was all thanks to the scroll Shisui had left after his death. There was a reason why the jutsu seemed to just click with the Uchiha prodigy. The Sharingan. The Sharingan allowed the user to perceive things around him at a much faster rate than normal, almost as if everything was moving in slow motion. Because of this, the Dojutsu allowed one's body to react to situations faster. And Shisui had discovered that paired with the Shunshin he could use his Sharingan to not only amplify the jutsu's effectiveness, but also the speed the jutsu took to activate, to dispel, and to perceive. The Dojutsu helped regulate the chakra control around your whole body in order to move in bursts of speed in split-second intervals. Naruto couldn't help but beam at his sensei's brilliance, eternally thankful for his fateful encounter with him. So while he was slowly progressing with the sunshine, he slowly started to improve on his blood manipulation. While Team Kurenai ventured further to Yukagaku, he made small slices in his skin and timed himself to see how fast he could close and seal up his wounds. Small cuts like a slice would take no longer than 10 seconds to heal, and if he didn't channel his chakra to the wound it would take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to heal. While larger injuries like a stab wound would take somewhere close to 1 minute to heal depending how bad the injury actually was. And would take around an hour to heal completely without channeling his chakra to it. But even with all of his improvements with the blood in his body, he was having trouble trying to manipulate it out of his body. He couldn't do much since Narumi had tried to stick to his side like glue and the only alone time he had was guard duty. He finally managed to make a decently sized ball of the substance before it popped away. Naruto was starting to grow irritated at his failed attempts until Isabu had to explain to him that he would just simply need better chakra control. Since the seal had been discovered on Naruto and the two of them managed to finally speak to another that had opened a small layer of the seal, allowing more of the demon's chakra to be accessible. But the biggest drawback to this was it had slightly thrown his chakra control out of whack. It wasn't a huge change, since he was able to perform all of his jutsus to the same capacity as before. His blood was used to the abundance amount of demon chakra, so it threw his reserves off. Oh good, the port, we should be able to catch the next boat to Yuki. Kurenai's soft voice said as she subconsciously hugged the poncho that was over her body closer to her, squeezing any warmth that it had left. The closer they walked to the small isolated port, the colder and colder it had become. Leaves on trees were starting to die, leaving them bare with the bark starting to peel off. The bareless branches started to show signs of snowfall as the port came further into view. Narumi did the same as she shivered under the cold, not looking forward to what it would be like once they actually step into the country. Naruto, on the other hand, wasn't fazed in the slightest by the cold. He had been manually circulating his blood through his body to keep him warm, another trick that Isabu had told him to try while their journey began. He peered over to Narumi as she breathed heavily, the freezing temperature making her breath visible to the naked eye as all three shinobi finally got to the port. No boats were in sight, the last one having just departed a half-hour ago. His thoughts then drifted back to his earlier musings. He was pretty excited that he would be working along with Kurenai. It was a surprise that he was more than welcome to accept with open arms. Naruto winced as he leaned his body against one of the dead trees, a piece of bark stabbing through his poncho and poking his skin. He shifted into a more comfortable position before he took another peek at Narumi. She had been awfully quiet since they left Konoha, barely speaking a word to either him or Kurenai. He chalked it up to her just being annoyed with him to what happened outside the Hokage Tower, but the silence was beginning to make Naruto a bit anxious. He felt a lump form in his throat at the thought, hoping she wasn't planning anything against him. He felt the snow under their feet shift slightly as a cold body came and stood next to him, teeth clacking together as she rubbed her, trying to stay warm. How are you holding up, Naruto-kun? Naruto turned over to Kurenai as she spoke. Smiling at how flushed her cheeks looked from the cold, she looked cute. He only shrugged his shoulders at her, shifting uncomfortably as he felt the piercing blue eyes of his sister look his way. Sadly, him and Kurenai didn't have a lot of opportunities to talk to one another. Whenever they tried, the weird gleam that would shadow over Narumi's eyes would make unbearably uncomfortable. Kurenai's voice was calm as she spoke, but he could hear the tenseness in her words. She leaned on the tree with Naruto. He fought back a smirk as the same piece of bark had poked Kurenai. I'm alright, I just want to finally get to this town. Kurenai nodded as she looked at Naruto up and down. She was slightly irritated to see that the blonde boy didn't seem to be bothered at all by the cold, he wasn't even shivering, and his face remained unflushed. She chalked it up to one of his new abilities she had told her about back in Konoha. Looking away from him, she turned her gaze back to the small port. Walking a little closer until she was on the edge of the dock, looking out into the vast pool of water. Several ice chunks floated within the water, getting swept up in the current before breaking apart. Straight ahead was the large island that was Yukagaku. Clouds hovered over the island, no doubt supplying the country with its massive amount of snow. She vaguely wondered what the country would really look like. She had never been to Yukagaku before, and the curiosity definitely piqued her interest. But after standing in the freezing cold, not even in the country yet, she found herself not caring anymore. It seems the boat is coming back. Kurenai suppressed jumping in surprise as Narumi's voice hit her randomly. Snapping her head, she saw the redhead standing next to her, arms crossed under her poncho as she stared straight ahead. Her voice was void of any emotion as she motioned Kurenai to look at the vast sea. And sure enough, a small silhouette of a boat had started to make their way to them. She could barely make out a person who was standing at the edge of the boat. Nodding her head to Narumi, she turned back and motioned Naruto to make his way over to her. He did so without hesitation as she stood next to her, making sure to be on the opposite side than Narumi. The three waited in silence as the boat finally parked itself in the port. A tall, skinny man stepped out from the shadows as he walked closer to the group. His body looked caved in like he hadn't eaten in years, his skin was pale and his straight black hair flowed all the way down to his ankles, just barely touching the ground. He easily towered over the Junin as he tilted his head to the side, glancing between Kurenai and the boat. It was silent for a while as the atmosphere dropped several degrees, if that was even possible. The man almost looked like a walking skeleton as his bright pink eyes glowed ever so faintly. Would you like a ride to Yukagaku? Naruto was surprised. The man's voice was not as deep as he was expecting it to be. Considering the condition, he expected something entirely different. Kurenai nodded her head, motioning to the Namikazes. She tried to keep her shivering under control as she responded. Yes, if you would be so kind. The man gave a gruff as he walked back to the small boat. Kurenai looked hesitant as she followed him as she finally got a good look at the boat. The boat was shockingly bigger than it had looked from a distance. There was a small table in the middle holding up several empty bottles. The man stepped in and turned to his side, allowing them to follow behind him. Kurenai was the first to follow suit. Next was Narumi, who took a seat to the Junin's left. And Naruto, who occupied the right. The man took soft steps to the front of the boat before untying the rope that was keeping it stationary. After that, he dipped his hand in the freezing water below, tilting his head so he could meet Kurenai's eyes. The man was even phased as snow had started to fall and soak into his skin. The boat then started to shift a bit as they finally left the boat's dock, making their way slowly to Yukagaku. What brings Konoha Shinobi to Yukagaku? We have an important mission that must be completed. In fact, if possible, can I ask you a few questions? The man stayed silent for a moment, his eyes never blinking as the snow damped his black hair. Depends. Kurenai cooled her expression before continuing. I was wondering if you knew anything about the strange disappearances in the town Roka. She said smoothly, waiting for a response. Narumi and Naruto looked his way as well. The man shook his head several times before submerging his hand deeper in the water, making the boat pick up speed. They're not disappearing, I reckon it's kidnapping. Kidnapping. Yes, after a single girl goes missing, it's chalked up to a runaway or maybe even getting lost. But the third, or even the ninth, it ain't just a coincidence anymore, he said. The air grew tense again as they rocked back and forth slightly due to the current. Naruto spoke up this time, curiosity getting the better of him. Do you have any idea who could be kidnapping these kids? He shook his head again. If I had to guess, then most likely a group of bandits. They tend to roam in the middle of the night from what I heard. Roka is the only town that has experienced something like this, he said, turning his head over to Narumi. She met his gaze with an unflinching one of her own. You should be careful out there, Missy. You are well within their age group of girls they go after. Narumi rolled her eyes at the man's words, not affected in the slightest. I can take care of myself, she chimed as she crossed her arms. Naruto, on the other hand, clenched his fists at this. While he wasn't close to his sister, the mere thought of something like that happening to her didn't sit well with him. Naruto turned around as soon as the man got quiet again. Kurenai continued to ask him questions, but he turned them out as he watched as they got closer to the island. Kidnappings, it definitely made more sense than kids just vanishing out of thin air. And from what the mysterious man had said, they typically went after young girls, informing the squad that a 4-year-old had just gone missing last night in Roka. Looking up at the snowfall, he felt the temperature around them drop several degrees again. He silently thanked Isabu for the blood style to keep his body warm. Naruto felt his eyes widen as Yukagaku finally came into view. He put hands on the edge of the boat and leaned forward to get a better view. Several clouds circled the island and the mountains in the back were completely covered in snow. Narumi had a similar reaction, finally letting her emotionless expression slip as she looked out next to him in wonder. Welcome to Yukagaku, the man's rough voice said as he docked the boat perfectly, tying the rope around to keep it at bay before letting Team Kurenai exit. Kurenai bowed to the man, thanking him for his service. The man nodded in response, pointing straight ahead of him. I dropped you guys off right next to Roka. Follow the path straight ahead and it should lead you directly to the town. Directly after he spoke, he hopped back into the boat and sailed off back into the frozen water. Kurenai turned back to the two Namikazes and offered a small, well, let's get going, shall we? Team Kurenai traveled at a moderate pace along the snowy path towards Roka town. They had been walking for about an hour and nothing eventful happened. Even the trip across the land of fire was not that exciting. The only mishap they encountered was a small group of bandits that had tried to attack them in their sleep. Unluckily for them, Kurenai had been the one doing guard duty that night, and the next morning Naruto and Narumi didn't even know that enemies were there that night when they woke up. Naruto found himself lost within the scenery the closer they got to Roka town. He couldn't explain it, but it felt somewhat peaceful here. The snow didn't bother him very much, unlike his two female companies. The only issue was it was a little harder to walk in, but they all had brought their combat boots, so it wasn't posing much of a problem. The sun was beginning to set and lit up the sky in a beautiful pinkish hue that basked the freezing earth. The closer they got to Roku, he wondered what the town would be like. He expected it to be vastly different from Konoha, since only ever saw snowfall during winter and was more of an advanced town overall. And if he recalled, Yukagaku didn't have any shinobi, just pure civilians who lived day-to-day lives. Another hour passed before Team Kurenai saw large wooden arches overlapping together, with a large sign that read, Roka Town, at the top. The sign was broken, half of the sign hanging on by a thread as the rest of the town came into view. Whoa, Naruto said, squinting his eyes as the three of them walked through the arches. The town was way quieter than Konoha had ever been. On both sides, wooden buildings were lined up adjacent from one another. There were not many people walking through the snow-covered street, but the ones that were all turned to look at the Konoha shinobi. Transactions stopped and heads turned, all watching as Team Kurenai stepped further into the town. Naruto tried to ignore the stares looking their way but found it increasingly hard to do so. Don't worry, I'm sure they're just not used to visitors, Kurenai whispered to him with a smile on her face. He returned the gesture as they walked through a large building in the center of town. As soon as they walked in, Narumi and Kurenai breathed a heavy sigh of relief as the building was nice and warm. No doubt thanks to the boarded-up windows and the fireplace in the lobby. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the windows, making a mental note about it for later as he turned his attention back to the room. A smiling woman was seated behind a counter and offered him the widest smile he had ever seen. She gestured her arms out wide. Hello and welcome to Hotel Frost, where your satisfaction is our guarantee. Naruto sweat dropped at her words, clearing not buying into her fake smile. Kurenai returned the smile with one of her own, raising a hand up and running her fingers through her messy hair. Do you have 3 rooms available? Oh, most definitely. It's usually 1,000 yen a night, but for you guys I'll make it 500. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at the girl. She asked the girl what she meant. Shocked to see her face fall and her smile fade. Well, I assumed you Konoha shinobi were here to help us get back the kids who have disappeared. Actually, that's exactly why we're here. Kurenai smoothly lied, giving her best reassuring smile, making the woman's eyes lit up. Kurenai quickly grabbed the 3 room keys and one each to Naruto and Kurenai. She had told them to go and get unpacked and settled in for the night and she would check on them soon. She had wanted to have a chat with the woman before leaving. Naruto and Narumi quickly obeyed Kurenai and made their way out of the lobby and up the stairs. Walking next to each other was more awkward than Naruto had thought it would be. Narumi was still eerily quiet to him. She had refused to speak a word to him since they left. It didn't know what had gotten her so mad at him. Ever since the mission in Tizuna, she had grown even more distant. He didn't really care about the distance issue, since it's been like that for years, but he was more confused on why she was doing it as of late. At the beginning she seemed pleased to work alongside him as if she was hoping to spark a family bond that has never been there. But now he just didn't know why she had a sudden change of heart. What are your plans for later tonight? Naruto stared at Narumi for a moment, rather surprised. He hadn't expected her to suddenly talk to him. Taking another step up the stairs, he quickly shrugged. Probably rest. It's already getting late and I want to get a good night's rest before information gathering tomorrow. He lied, not wanting to tell her that he planned on practicing his blood manipulation. He didn't want her to be all up in his case like before. Finally getting to the last step, she had turned to face him. It was moments like these that he really missed, having the rest of Team 11 here with him. I was thinking maybe we could have a friendly spar, see what each other is made of, she said, her voice hard as she spoke. Naruto narrowed his eyes suspiciously at his sister. It was the first time ever any one of his siblings had asked him for a spar. He watched as her eyes glazed over for a moment. Probably communicating with the Bayu within her, he thought to himself as he tilted his head at her. He stayed silent for a moment as he let her words fully sink in, weighing out all the pros and cons. Maybe another time, Narumi, we have an important mission to do. He then walked past her, her body staying in place as he scanned his room card with his corresponding room. He didn't notice before, but the hotel hallway was quiet, so quiet he could hear the annoyed breathing of his sister. Narumi gave a laugh that sent a chill up Naruto's spine. So you don't want to fight me, huh? But I suppose I know why you don't want to. It must be hard knowing you can't stand up to your older sister. She said it smoothly, turning her face so he could see the cocky smile that formed on her lips. Flashing her enlarged canines, letting the unspoken challenge sink into him. If she had noticed Naruto's hands tightening around the doorknob in anger, then she didn't say anything. Allowing herself the mentally victory as she strode past him confidently. The cold voice of his sister resonated deeply within Naruto as he sent a piercing glare to his sister with barely controlled rage. He watched in silence as she walked into her own hotel room directly next to his, making sure to flash one more toothy smile his way and disappearing from sight. He threw his door open in anger, almost ripping it right off its old hinges and slamming it shut. She really knew how to push his buttons in the worst way possible. She knew exactly how to get a rise out of him. Breath. Naruto reluctantly headed the Bijuu's words, feeling the jutsu that Isabu had used on him the very first time they had met to calm him down. It took several minutes this time, but that jutsu finally started to have an effect. He felt his anger start to subside, let out a small breath of relief as he thanked the Beiyu again. He took a seat on his bed and put his head in his hand. He knew that coming on a long-term mission with Narumi was gonna suck. Even with Kurenai here, it just served to make the moments with Narumi worse. You need to learn to keep your emotions in check. I can't always step in and calm you down. Naruto gave a stained smile and nodded his head. He knew that Isabu was right. Anything relating to his family he would usually blow up with anger or cry like a wimp. The more times he thought he was over everything, the more times he was reminded of their over-looming presence that had in his life. They had always affected him and will always. Unless he had found a way out, he didn't really know what to do about it all. If only he had a way to escape it all. A sudden knock broke his train of thought. He looked up at his door in surprise, wondering who it could be. Naruto-kun. It's me, can you open up? Naruto felt his heart start to beat faster in his chest as the familiar voice reached his ears. Her voice was muffled, but he could recognize that voice anywhere. He quickly jumped off his bed and made his way to the door, opening it wide to see the still shivering Kurenai. Kurenai smiled as she looked at Naruto, asking if she could come in. He nodded of course as he let her in, letting her take a seat on the lone bed in the room while he leaned against the wall. She sighed as she brought her arm up to rub one of her sore shoulders, tilting her head back in a comfortable manner. Finally we made it. I thought this trip would never end, she said with a chuckle. Naruto laughed with her, nodding his head along with her. Yeah, been one of the longest weeks of my life. Speaking of, how are you doing? With Narumi and all, I kinda overheard your guys' little spat as I was talking to Uta, the girl who gave us our rooms, she said, worry flashing in her eyes as she turned to look at him. While she didn't hear anything get out of hand, what she heard was enough to make her worried about her favorite blonde. It was almost like the family lived to make Naruto's life progressively worse as he got older. Naruto wanted to stay silent, but a scowl couldn't help but sneak its way in. I'm as good as I'll ever be with her here. Annoyed with the idea that he had to work alongside her again, especially when she had become more bitchy for some reason. Yes, well, at least we have each other, that's something, right? She said, her eyes closing due to her smile stretching all the way across her face. Naruto had to fight back a blush as he looked at her. Happy to see that her eyes were closed so she didn't have to witness his embarrassment. He reached up and scratched the back of his head, turning away in a feeble attempt to hide his flushing face. Why yeah, it's the only plus about this mission. Kurenai giggled before standing up from the bed. She stretched her back, letting out a satisfied groan as it popped. Good, but I do have to tell you, Uta had told me that most of the people living in this town who have a daughter under the age of 16 have gone missing suddenly. So tomorrow I want you to go asking around and see if you spot anyone looking suspicious. Use a henge if you have to. I'll be checking out the local bars and talking to the older locals to see if they have noticed anything, she said. Yes, Kurenai-sensei. Kurenai laughed again as she bent down next to the blonde. She started to run her fingers through his blonde locks as she playfully pouted at Naruto. Oh come on, you don't have to call me sensei, just Kurenai is fine. Naruto barely registered what she had said, too distracted at how soft her hands had felt as she massaged his hair. He gave a ghost of a nod as he closed his eyes in bliss, all his worries having melted away in an instant. Wow, A simple head rub from this woman was enough to calm you down faster than my soothing jutsu. Aisabu teased, finding enjoyment in the blonde boy's sudden attitude change. Can't talk right now, sorry. Kurenai let her hand linger for longer than she had anticipated before pulling away. Strangely missing the warmth it had provided for her, not knowing that Naruto had felt the same thing. Kurenai forced her eyes away from him as she started to walk to the door. Well, I have to go and inform Narumi about what she is doing tomorrow. So try and get some rest, okay, Naruto-kun. Naruto gave a thumbs up. You got it, Kurenai-chan, he said, freezing in place at the unexpected suffix sneaked its way out into his sentence. Embarrassment flooded his body as he quickly made his way to apologize to her. Kurenai just blushed slightly, a small tinge of pink adorning her cheeks as he said it. She found herself not caring that he had called her that, in fact it made her smile grow even wider. Not knowing why exactly, she had just chalked it up to the frozen weather messing with her head. She quickly shot down any form of apology she sensed was about to get thrown her way. She eased his worries, telling him that she welcomed the suffix, that it was only fair since she had used one for him since they had met. Naruto nodded, face flushed red as he opened his hotel door for her. She thanked him and she took one last look back before walking next door to Narumi's room. Good night, Naruto-kun. Good night, Kurenai-chan. 17 days left until the full moon. You are really bad at information gathering. Shut up, I'm trying my best here. You know I have never done this before, right? I'm still a fucking genin. Naruto retorted back to Aisabu with barely controller rage as he stomped angrily down an unoccupied ally of Roka. They have been staying in Roka for a few weeks now and information gathering was starting to be a lost cause. Most of the parents whose daughters have gone missing didn't have any useful information. Saying that their kids were there that night and in the morning they were gone, vanished without a trace. He had even stayed up several times all throughout the night in hopes to see anyone roaming around suspiciously. So far he had seen nobody that looked suspicious or anything out of the ordinary. It was just people living everyday life somberly. You could physically see the anguish in their eyes as they went to work that day. Or even to buy groceries, almost as if no one had any faith left. He found himself growing more and more irritated as days went on, with gathering information souring his mood, and the ever-growing remarks and insults he would receive from Narumi whenever they were to discuss what they had found out. The first talk he had with Kurenai the night they had gotten here helped a lot. Most of the nights she would come over for a chat just to make sure he was doing okay. He genuinely appreciated it and concluded that he would have gone insane without her here. But as soon as she left, the thoughts of Narumi would plague his mind. She became more and more passive-aggressive towards Naruto. She had begun calling her weak in front of Kurenai. And that was the last straw. He had almost taken her up, and that sparring session she had brought up, his overwhelming goal to prove his family wrong, which was once a goal for himself to cope with his family's abandonment, was slowly morphing into pure resentment. But Aisabu had done everything he could to calm him down. It had worked, but just barely. He shoved his hands in his pockets, a scowl on his face as he kept channeling his chakra into his bloodstream to keep him warm, trying to rid his thoughts of the anger he felt for both Narumi and Aisabu. I heard that you know. Ugh, you've been so damn talkative these past few days. It's been so annoying. Wait, do you hear that? Aisabu said, cutting Naruto off. Naruto was about to get angry again until his ears twitched, hearing a faint mumbling sound in the distance. Naruto looked to his right, seeing nobody around. Then to his left, it was the way he had come into the alley and he knew no one was walking the street. The sun was already starting to set and most people were already locked in their homes. He rested his head back against the building directly behind him, ears twitching again as the mumbling began to increase in volume. It was impossible to make out what the voices were saying, but he could hear several people talking. Naruto looked back up the building, looking for any kind of advantage point to get a better listen. He scowled as he circled the building. All the windows were boarded up and the door to the front was chained up. If he forced himself, they would obviously be aware of his presence. Looking up the tall building, he faintly made out a lit shine of yellow peeking through from the roof. Bingo! He started channeling chakra to his feet, slowly stepping up the giant wooden building. His steps were quiet, making sure to not make a sound and alert any of the people inside. He was thankful for the darkness as he climbed the building effortlessly before getting to the roof, putting his foot down so he was able to make out a decently sized open skylight. He internally cheered as he made his way over. The voices were starting to become much more clear the closer he got to the skylight. Making sure to stay hidden, he got onto his stomach and peeked his head so his head was just barely visible. Inside were about 3 people he did not recognize in Roka. Each were wearing the same oversized brown trench coat, hoods obscuring their faces. They were huddled together as they crowded around the center of the room. Naruto narrowed his eyes, trying to get a better view at what they seemed to be hiding. Why do you think he asked us to meet here? We're right in the fucking center of Roka, for heaven's sake. Who knows what that fucking masked freak is thinking? I swear we beat a good paycheck for this. The man in the center said viciously as he spat down on the floor, clearly irritated. Naruto kept his eyes trained on the 3 men as the one in the middle slowly shifted to his left, grabbing something off the small table, giving Naruto just enough room to catch a glimpse at what they were hovering over. Naruto felt his eyes go wide with rage. In front of them all was a tied-up girl, looking to be about 16 with her arms and legs tied together. Tears stained her cheeks as her red puffy eyes looked scared. He could see her body shaking in fear as she desperately tried to spit out the wrapped-up cloth that was stuffed in her mouth, clearly a way to keep her silent. Just looking at the sight was enough to piss Naruto off. He was going to wait until they talked themselves, but now seeing what they were, figured he would get them to talk now. He steadied his angry breathing as he formed the horse seal, followed quickly by bird and serpent. His eyes darkened over, whispering ever so silently, letting his voice carry itself in the breeze. Endless paranoia, he said, channeling his chakra over the room, making sure not to affect the poor girl who was forced to watch the exchange. 2 of the men down below felt their spines stiffen, like a bolt of lightning had struck them. The one on the far left backed away fearfully, his body starting to tremble as he pointed a finger at the guy in the middle. His hand was shaking violently. Why you know something, don't you? Was this your idea to trap us in here? He yelled, making the man in the center look at him in confusion. Kai, what are you taking? Shut up, Tai. Don't step any closer, Kai yelled, his hood falling off his head. The now identified Tai stopped his walk, his eyes flashing in annoyance. He had no idea what had come over his friend. Look man, what the fuck is your problem? Tai asked, biting back his scowl as he took another step forward. Kai screamed in fear as he took out a kunai and charged at Tai. Tai widened his eyes at the sudden assault, quickly grabbing a kwani of his own to block the attack. Kai, what the fuck? He yelled angrily, unaware of his friend behind him, looking down at him with tears streaming down his face. Tai felt his eyes widen in shock as he felt something sharp embed itself into his back. He gasped in pain from the sensation. He turned his head, blood leaking down his lips and falling off his chin. Hito, what the? Tai yelled before the life faded away from his eyes, losing his footing and slipping on his own puddle of blood and falling onto the floor. Hito then looked on in shock, seeing the kwani he had just plunged into his best friend, the man who had saved him and had given him a new life. He felt fresh tears form in his eyes as he glanced over to Kai, the same expression on his face. Kai raised a hand to cover his mouth, fighting back a sob as he watched his best friend twitch on the floor. Why you killed him? Before Kai could say anything else, he felt the eyes roll in the back of his head, his breath leaving his body as he fell to the ground lifeless. A kunai in his skull courtesy of Hito. Hito fought back more tears as he killed his second friend. He didn't care to hold in the loud sob that escaped his mouth as he brought the kunai to his own neck. I'm sorry, my friends. With one quick slice he fell over to the ground, the life fading from his eyes as he choked on his own blood. Kai, Hito, what the fuck happened? Tai yelled, looking at his 2 passed out friends who were now suddenly laying on the floor. He turned away from the girl on the floor and walked over to Hito, checking his pulse for confirmation. After confirming that he was alive, he did the same for Kai, confusion washing over him. It wasn't every day that your 2 friends just passed out of nowhere. He just chalked it up to a coincidence. His leader gave him perfect instructions, and that this base was completely safe. There was no way anyone could get in here. He even made sure by boarding up all the doors and windows just to be extra sure. Someone would have to be a big fool too. Don't you dare move. If I see you reach even slightly for a weapon, I'll end your life right here. Tai felt his spine stiffen as something sharp glided across his neck. He felt his pulse quicken as he turned back to peek around him, staring deep into a lone gold eye that pierced through him. No way. Naruto pushed back his frown at the man's words, not completely understanding why he didn't seem scared. He only looked on in shock as Naruto's gold eye looked at him. The gold eye was thanks to the Bayu inside of him. Isabu had told him he could channel a minuscule amount of the beat's chakra into his eye, enough that it wouldn't be noticeable so he could use it for intimidation. Or just to look cool. I'm going to need you to answer my questions, and if you don't comply then I'll make sure this is the last thing you see. Naruto said, narrowing his gold eye. Tai hesitantly nodded as the blonde knot behind him suddenly kicked his legs out from under him. Tai yelped in surprise as he fell to the ground, hitting his head against the wooden floor rather hard. Naruto crouched down until they were eye level, kunai against the man's neck. Now, where were you planning to take this girl? He asked, scowling as he watched the man go unfazed by his interrogation. Tai had just started to chuckle, before it evolved into full-blown laughter. It was enough to make the tied-up girl behind them start to stir in her sleep. Naruto's scowl deepened as he pushed the kunai deeper, drawing a single droplet of blood from his skin. That had seemed to shut up the man's laughter. Naruto asked his question again, hoping for the man to cooperate. I can't believe it, he was 100% right. Tai said, his eyes shining with glee as his laughter continued. Naruto tightens his grip around his kunai. He was trying real hard not to shove the kunai deep into the man's throat. If he could, he wanted to keep all three of these men alive. He tried to avoid killing as much as possible. He still wasn't really over the brutal killing of Sokka. But even the small amount of Isabu's chakra was enough to multiply his bloodlust tenfold. Fighting back the foreign urge to kill the man, he swiped another kunai from his pouch and plunged it deep into Tai's leg. Tai's laughter evolved into a scream as the pain ricocheted in his body. His breathing was starting to become heavy as he felt the blood leave his new wound. Who was right? Naruto asked. The man who hired us, he said a spiky blonde boy with a lone gold eye would come and meet us here. He told me I would have to face you alone. Tai said, his laugh returning as Naruto's eyes widened, his grip slowly loosed on his kunai. What? But how? We have nothing to do with the kidnappings in Roka, I swear. We're just traveling bandits. He told us to do this and paid us well. He said. Naruto hesitated for a moment. He wasn't sure if he truly believed what the man was saying. It could be a huge bluff, trying to get out of an inevitable defeat. He had only said it after he revealed himself, but he couldn't help but let the man's words linger in his head. So he turned the kunai in his leg. Tai screamed again as he hit the inside of his cheek in pain. He was having trouble keeping his anger at bay. I swear I'm telling you the truth. We have nothing to do with it. He told me he wanted to prove you were coming, cause of some fortune he said you guys found. All of Naruto's doubts quickly faded away at the rest of the man's words. He felt his stomach drop several stories in his chest. There was no way anyone would have known about the fortune. It was impossible for anyone else to know. Naruto quickly formed a few hand seals as two water clones formed at his feet. He glanced over at him, his right golden eye glowing in the darkened room. Escort the girl home, make sure she gets there safe. The two clones nodded, leaving Naruto alone in the room with Tai. Now, Naruto said, as more and more of the Sanbi's influence had started to affect him. Silence engulfed the room as Naruto pushed his kunai deeper into Tai's leg, burying it so just the hilt of the blade was visible. Tai squirmed in pain as Naruto smiled wickedly, grabbing Tai by his short brown hair. He opened his left eye, showing his Sharingan to the empty room. Tai couldn't help but feel unimaginable fear as he stared into the multicolored eyes of the boy, one gold and one red. The boy's voice was dark, like it had belonged to a different person entirely. Tai felt himself get sucked into the boy's Sharingan, his eyes glazing over. You are going to tell me everything you know, down to the last detail. So, did you find the girl? Yeah, already locked her up. Damn girl was a hassle, let me tell you. I'm sure, hopefully she'll fetch us a good price. These sick fucks pay well for the young ones. You got that right. Silence suddenly fell upon the campfire as one of the men talking went quiet. A pale hand raised up to his neck that a kunai now embedded itself into. Guggling faintly passed through his lips as his own blood had started to pool in his mouth, making it impossible to breathe. His friend next to him remained blissfully unaware of the man's sudden agony as he sat with his eyes closed. The man gasped with pain as he fell down to the ground, a shadowy figure catching him before he hit the ground and placing the lifeless body quietly down. Wind style, vacuum gun, the figure whispered, her voice so quiet the only alive man left thought it was just the wind. The man suddenly felt an immense amount of pressure weigh itself onto his body. He felt his muscles start to crack as his body started to feel like he was getting pulled towards something, like he was getting sucked in from an extreme wind. Before he had enough time to say or do anything, the sensation had become too much and his body was flown forwards, sending him flying right into the hands of an unknown person. The air got knocked out of him and he managed to squint one of his eyes open to see deadly cerulean eyes looking up at him, void of any emotion. He tried his best to look away only to see the dead body next to her feet. His heart dropped and he looked back up in fear, trying to ignore the metallic scent that the new corpse was emitting. Who are you? Shut up, Narumi said, gripping the man's neck tighter, making his gasp for air. Narumi wasn't messing around, she has had no possible leads in the last few weeks and she was starting to get irritated. The groups of bandits she has had come across were not involved in the vanishings, just pure dumb and not worth her time. Adding on to the fact that her brother had still been refusing a match with her, she had tried and tried again to rile him up but he shot her down. She had come close once she realized how high he regarded Kurenai. She had never seen her brother look at anyone else the same way he looked at Kurenai. And it pissed her off. So she decided to release some steam, training away from Team Kurenai in a forest just bordering Roka town. It was when she had felt a chakra presence. It was faint but it was just enough for her to pinpoint the exact location it had come from. It was how she had found herself in this situation. She had traced the chakra signature all the way to a small camp that these two bandits had made. What had confused her was the chakra signature she had originally felt was nowhere in sight when she got here. Almost like it had vanished into thin air. It wasn't crazy for a shinobi to mask their chakra well enough to not be sensed. But Narumi prided herself on her sensory abilities. It was one thing she could always rely on. So whoever's presence she had felt earlier had to be a master at hiding their chakra. The only person ever to get past her sensing ability was Naruto. At that thought alone her nails dug into the bandit's neck, drawing a small amount of blood. You are going to tell me where exactly you are keeping these kids hostage, and if you wanna live then you better answer fast. Like hell I will, the man said through rasped breaths. He made a feeble attempt to spit at Narumi. The redhead merely grinned as she formed a single-handed seal before grabbing the man's arm. Gahhhhhhh. A large gust of wind emitted from her palm as the man's arm snapped backwards, breaking the arm into two, almost ripping it completely off his socket. The man cried out in pain as several tears started to land onto her hand, the very same that was squeezing his neck. He whimpered in her grasp. Narumi rolled her eyes at the man. He made a living off doing who knows what to these poor innocent children, but the second his arm breaks he turns into a total wimp. Pathetic. Oh okay, I'll tell you. We keep them in a secret base underneath Crystal L Lake. It's on the other side of Roka. He rushed out, barely keeping his cool as Narumi's nails dug deeper into his skin. And how do we get into the base? She said, bringing her hand up again and placing it on his unbroken arm. His eyes grew wide in fear as he faltered at her touch. His body started to spasm as he trembled. There's a hollow tree next to the lake. There's a false bee-bark door on it. All you have to do is move it aside. Please, I'm telling you the truth. He pleaded loudly, scared beyond belief for his life. Narumi stayed silent for a few moments, digesting the man's words. It seemed kinda elaborate for a mere kidnapping scheme. Having a base underneath a lake, and if she remembered, all the lakes closest to Roka are all frozen over. So it would make sense for them to coordinate their next kidnapping, or even get together in secret. It was most likely why no one else could ever find them. She was told by several of the locals that a few shinobi of differing villages had come and gone by Roka, all not finding a single lead on the base. Who is your leader? How many more of you are there? About 30 of us. Oh, our numbers have dwindled slightly due to the harsh weather. A&L leader? Well, you see, I don't know. He keeps his face covered with a mask. Narumi hummed at the man's explanation. A bandit group with a mysterious masked man as their leader. If she believed the man's confession, which she did, then she could assume that they had much more powerful shinobi hidden underneath in the base itself, letting the cannon fodder be the ones doing their bidding. She nodded her head. Okay, I believe you, she said, making the man give a strained smile. He started to cry tears of joy, happy to be set free. His happiness was short-lived, however, as with a quick flick of her hand she snapped the man's neck. The cracking sound echoed out into the forest, bouncing off the dying trees, letting the breeze take the remains. She let the man drop to the ground lifeless, slipping out of her grasp as his body laid right next to his friend's. She smirked as she finally had gotten some useful information. The situation with the missing girls was beginning to unravel. And since their base of operations was technically still in Roka town, they could most likely finish this mission tomorrow. But they would still have to wait for the full moon. It was the only reason they had came up here in the first place. But if she let herself dwell on that thought alone, it would be strange if the kidnappings were not involved with the fortune. This could be the only thing that had to finish. Hell, the full moon could have been a huge plot to begin with. Though, now that she thought about it, the meeting could have been referring to anything. Standing in place, an unwelcome feeling of anxiousness wrapped itself around her, leaving goosebumps on her skin. Sure, they had a vague idea of what they were getting into, but the full moon meeting left too many unanswered questions that just didn't sit well with the redhead. She shook her head, shoving her thoughts into the back of her mind before jumping up into the trees and making her way back to Roka town. The sun had already set and she had gotten even more information than she had originally thought. If she was lucky, then maybe one of the few restaurants in the town was still open. Naruto stood frozen in place, a blood-soaked kunai in hand as he looked ahead of him. The body of a man laying beside him, a large vertical slash going across his throat. Blood leaked out from the wound, staining the wooden logs beneath him. Both of his eyes had reverted to normal, bringing Naruto back to his original state as he looked at the scene in front of him with a multitude of emotions. You did what you had to do. You got plenty of useful information out of him, information we can use to save every girl held captive. Yeah. But I had let the anger consume me. It totally took over. He thought back to Isabu. While true he didn't get a lot of useful information, he managed to squeeze the location of the base out of the man, as well as the man who had sent them there. It was a masked man, and he seemed to be aware of the fortune that Naruto and his team had found. Tai had answered questions he shouldn't have known. He almost recited the fortune perfectly before he drew his last breath. He clenched his fists at the thought. He told himself coming into this that he wouldn't kill if he didn't have to. Isabu had tried to talk reason into Naruto, saying that it was a necessary job for a shinobi. If he hadn't killed the man, he would have no doubt gone on with his life, doing who knows what to a different girl, or even taking the lives of many more innocent people. And the anger he had felt using Isabu's chakra, he had only used a sliver, and it was enough to completely change his personality. He knew demon chakra was vile. They weren't demons for nothing after all. But the feeling was sickening. He shivered in thought of what it would have been like if he had channeled more, not liking the answer he had come up with. He didn't know how long he had stayed in the room, but it was long enough for one of his water clones to come back and tell him that they had returned the girl back to her house safe and sound. Naruto was happy to hear that. It lifted a weight that he didn't know he was carrying on his back. He sighed as he looked around, dropping his kunai as he inspected the room he was in, finally having the chance. It seemed like an old bar that was out of business or abandoned. Several bottles of various alcohol lined the shelves. Dust covered as several beat-up stools and rugs lined the bar. On the other side was a large, barren fireplace, looking untouched as a large staircase leading to an upper floor in the corner. Many boxes and rubble blocked the way, refusing anyone who tried to go up. Many people would have enjoyed their stay in this bar. He wondered why it was left to rot in the town. It has a strange charm, doesn't it? The walls are even made out of mahogany. Naruto tensed as an unknown voice echoed within the barricaded walls. Jumping forwards, he made it to the opposite side of the room, flinging a new kunai from his pouch as he scanned the room, looking for any sign of an intruder. My, calm down. I just came to have a drink, and maybe a little chat. Naruto turned towards the bar, throwing his kunai as fast as he could towards the voice. The kunai soared through the air before smashing through a bottle of alcohol in a mysterious man's hands. Naruto felt his eyes go wide as he finally got a good look at the man. he was wearing a long dark blue trench coat. It went all the way down to his ankles. There were many large wave symbols etched onto the cloak. Naruto counted 3 symbols before noticing the blank white mask that covered his face, eye holes going unseen as his hood remained down, showing off his head of shiny silver hair. Without even seeing the man's face, Naruto could hear his frown as he spoke. "Oh man, that was perfectly good rum you just destroyed." Naruto didn't falter at the man as he readied another kunai. He wasn't in the mood for jokes at the moment. The masked man stayed still as he looked down at the broken bottle. You're the masked leader who had hired this group to wait here for me." The man nodded as he finally moved his body, jumping over the bar and taking a seat on one of the stools. Naruto didn't let his guard down as he watched the man place his foot on the stool, bringing his leg to his chest. "Yes, I am indeed, and I can certainly say I am quite shocked. I didn't actually expect you to kill him," he chimed out, surprise evident in his voice as he looked over the body of Tai. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man. He could sense no ill intent from the masked man. Naruto was sure he didn't even see him as a threat. The man seemed to carry himself with an absurd amount of aloofness. But that didn't stop Naruto from being weary. Whoever this was, he seemed to know a great deal that he shouldn't. So Naruto kept his guard up, getting ready to channel his chakra in case he needed to. "Do not be alarmed, I'm not here to fight you. Like I said, I am here for a chat. And what makes you think I want to hear anything you have to say?" Naruto called back to the still man. The masked man's smirk going unseen as a chuckle escaped his mouth. Inside of Naruto, Aisabu narrowed his one good eye. Something had seemed strangely familiar about this man. "Well, you see, I think I have a great deal of information that you would just love to hear, Naruto." Naruto widened his eyes, his back stiffening in surprise at hearing his name get spoken. He looked back at him in suspicion. He said he had info for Naruto. He figured it was along the lines of the kidnappings that had plagued this town. But when he thought about that, it had made no sense. If what Tai said was true, then this was the man who had hired Tai to stay here and wait for Naruto. It suddenly clicked within Naruto. Tai and his group were just buying time until the masked figure could get here, perhaps knowing that this could be the one opportunity for him to speak to Naruto, perfectly secluded from everyone. What kind of information? The man's grin had only widened under his mask. He raised his hand and held up 3 fingers. "You see, I know all about you, Naruto-kun. Every little thing," he said, his voice oozing with glee as Naruto felt like squirming in place. Uncomfortable at what the man was talking about, but a strong feeling of uneasiness washed over Naruto, a feeling shared by his Bayou companion. The masked man kept his fingers raised as he jumped off the stool, pacing slowly towards Naruto. Each step he took making the wood under him creak loudly as he got closer. "1. I know all about your secret, the one hidden in that left eye of yours," he said, as Naruto felt his body pale. Dread wrapped itself around Naruto as the masked man put one of his fingers down. 2. About the ability to control blood, a rare development indeed. Naruto felt the sweat bead down his body. He felt paralyzed as he watched the man finally get close to him. His body refused to move as the man was mere inches away from him. His mind was starting to break down around him as the man continued to speak. Bending down as he lowered another finger, this time his voice came out as a hushed whisper as he poked Naruto in the chest, letting his words marinate. "And 3. About your little friend you have sealed in you." Naruto felt his heartbeat quicken, shock entering his body at an alarming rate. There was no way, absolutely no way this man knew all of his secrets. He had hid them for so long. He had only told one person before, and how could he have known about Aisabu? Even he didn't know how he got sealed into him. Naruto's lips went dry as he tried to find a response somewhere in his brain. The man's finger felt hot at the touch as he pulled away, taking a few steps back, obviously amused that his actions had managed to affect the blonde. "How do you?" "In due time," he said, cutting Naruto off. Naruto could only nod his head as he swallowed the lump forming in his throat. Even if Naruto didn't want to wait for an explanation, he was pretty much forced to. He felt like his world was starting to crumble around him. "Do not worry, I have no intention of spilling your deepest secrets," the man mocked, amusement etching themselves in his words as he crossed his arms. "But I would like you to do something for me, or more specifically my group." Naruto internally felt like crap. He felt trapped, more trapped than he had ever been in his entire life. Even stuck with his horrible family, he had never felt such a strong sense of helplessness, like everything he had known was a lie. And in exchange for you helping me out, not only will I keep my promise to you and keep my mouth shut, I will also tell you everything you have wanted to know. Like how he had gotten sealed inside of you. And about the very man who had killed your precious sensei. His very words broke Naruto out of his stature. Naruto snapped his head to meet the masked man's eyes, or where he assumed his eyes would be under the mask. A scowl broke out at the corner of Naruto's lips, animosity setting his blood aflame. He and Isabu both narrowed their eyes, Naruto quickly recovering from the shock at hearing his secrets get revealed so suddenly. If Naruto had any doubt in his mind at the man's words, it was quickly squashed. There was absolutely no way from him to know everything, it was impossible. Unless he was there that night of the sealing, the night his sensei had died. But, thinking about it again, the man was aware of the fortune, meaning he could have possibly got all the information of his secrets if he was getting his own fortunes. Or perhaps getting it straight from the fortune teller themselves. So the masked man would have to be telling the truth, or at least have the information on the two things he desperately wanted to know. Even if the man was lying, which he didn't think he was, it was a lead. A lead that he knew no one in Konoha would know. And what is it you want me to do? The man smirked, hook, line and sinker. I think that can wait until I fully trust you, he said, making Naruto glare at him. Naruto's eyes flashed angrily, even more pissed off than he was before. The man continued his speech, pacing around Naruto like fresh prey waiting to strike. On the night you and your team attack the base, I will be waiting for you on the highest floor, he finished. See you then, Naruto-kun. The man's voice etched itself in the wind, flowing around the now empty room. Naruto turned around, finally realizing that the man seemingly vanished into thin air, not leaving a single trace behind. Naruto clenched his fists, not bothering to hide his Sharingan as it flared to life, spinning rapidly. His nails dug into his palm, drawing a small amount of blood, barely taking notice of the pain. He had felt like a fool, falling victim in the man's words. Naruto just stood there, letting the onslaught affect him greatly. Sure, he was a fool, but by the off chance the man truly knew what he promised, he would take this risk, even if his secrets were on the line. He would finally get the answers that have been plaguing his mind for the past several years, the one thing that kept him awake at night. The one thing that mattered more than proving his family wrong. Naruto swore on his life, on his very last breath, that he would find out who had killed Shisui, and take revenge on taking the person who had given him a reason to live. No matter what. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.